I just got done building my new 24 by 40 shop. I'm upgrading from a 3-car garage where I was using that third bay to do all the work that I've done on my cars and then all the videos that I've done, and just got done building this shop, and I figured it'd be kind of fun to maybe talk about what it took to build the shop, you know, like the cost, the time, you know, some things that were good and things I don't like about it, that kind of stuff. I figured I'd just go over that and give you guys some information. So let's start right at the top. What did it cost to build this shop? There's some things that I bought, some things that I did that maybe you wouldn't need to do or you would need to do more, but where I'm at, I'm just about $52,500, give or take, on building this shop. That's a lot more than I budgeted, that I planned what I thought it was going to cost. But again, that includes some things that I ended up paying a guy to do a couple things I didn't want to do in the end, and so that changed. But I'll go over all that stuff. But really, to build a 24 by 40 shop where I'm at, stick frame, not a pole building or post frame, if they call it that. Where I'm at, I have to build a stick frame. I have to have it in the harmony of the home. Can't just throw up a couple of poles and some sheet metal and call it a day. So fine, that's all right. I prefer stick frame. I think it looks better. It will be something that will be a nice addition to my home, and hopefully cross my fingers that it'll help the value down the road. But so again, $52,500 is about what it costs to do all this, and I got a breakdown of all my costs here, and some of this stuff is not going to apply to you guys. Some of this stuff is not going to be, you know, interesting. And what I spent on the entry door for my shop, nobody cares about that kind of stuff. But some of this stuff is maybe helpful to a guy that's going to be building a shop, or maybe what is it going to take to do something like this. So I'll go over some of this stuff. It's going to be mostly, I'm going to round the numbers. I mean, you don't want to hear $573.53 for something, you know, so we're just going to round the numbers. I'll start at the top here. The engineering plans, so I had this, I drew up what I wanted and I sent it to an engineering place here in town and had them do the formal plans because I needed to do a permit. Where I'm at, I live in a neighborhood that, I mean, getting a permit's the right thing to do, but I probably have a neighbor that's gonna be checking in on that kind of stuff, and I really didn't want to get thumped for not having that permit. Plus, it keeps everything legit, and in case anything comes up, it's all legal, right? It's all done. So that's really the way you should do it. And so I got about $1,600 in the plans to have all this drawn up on full 24 by 36 inch, you know, pages for, you know, with all the drawings and stuff. And then almost $600 in the permit itself to do that. So we're call it $2,200 for the pair of those. So then you got the construction, and I rented a jackhammer to break up. So I had a 10 by 20 shed in this, actually right where I'm standing, there was a 10 by 20 shed in this spot, and I needed to get that out of here. So I put that on Craigslist and gave it to a guy for free. Just come and get it out of my yard so I can make room for the shop. But I had some concrete that I had to break up, so I had to rent a concrete jackhammer for that, and a concrete cutter. So that adds to the cost a little bit. But to start, you know, breaking the ground and do everything to put this concrete slab in, again, you get the footing or the footprint of the building, which is 24 by 40, 24 wide, 40 deep. And then I've got a little bit of driveway in front of the shop. That goes out to the gate that I put in. So with all that done, and then the back 15 feet of my shop is 8 inches thick, because I plan to put a lift, maybe 2 lifts in the back down the road. I wanted thicker concrete. I didn't want to have to cut the concrete out and pour a thicker piece. And then, so I just did 8 inches thick across the whole width of the shop, but 15 feet from the end there. And then it's just 4 inches thick here in the main part in the front, because I'm not gonna put anything heavy up here. We got $18,600 for the concrete, and that's the guy coming in and doing the excavating and forming everything up and ordering the concrete, pouring the concrete. Where this shop is at relative to like my driveway and the backyard stuff, we couldn't get a concrete truck right to here, so we had to rent a pumper to get that from the truck to here. So all that was $18,600 for the concrete. Some of these prices, you guys, where you're at, and that may be double what you could get it done for, maybe half of what you can get. It's going to depend on where you're at. This is not meant to be, you can recreate exactly what I did for this amount of money, but it gives you an idea of what it's going to cost, right? This is taking too long. I should probably speed this up. So the framing, the trusses, the sheeting, all the miscellaneous pieces, the brackets that you need to secure everything down, all of the nails, all that stuff to frame up this building. I got just under $6,700, $6,700 for all of the wood, right, the lumber, right, and then the brackets and nails and stuff like that. And then there's the siding and the Tyvek and the trim and the soffits and everything for the exterior. I got about $3,200 in that, and then the roof paper for the roofing, you know, that paper you have to put down underneath the shingles themselves, flashing. I got flashing around the edge, like kind of like a drip rail all the way around everything. That was about $2,200 for all that material, and I was gonna do it myself, but I really don't like being up there. That's not what I want to do, and it's in the middle of the summer. It's hot up there. I decided, you know, I'm just gonna take the money that I was gonna set aside for a lift and just pay a guy to bring in a crew and install it. And they did. They came in and they crushed it in like 4 hours. They did the whole roof. It was awesome. That was another $2,200 for that. Again, you can probably get it cheaper somewhere. It might be more expensive somewhere else, but that's just what it cost to guy. And he came, I called him on a Tuesday. He was here on a Thursday, and it was done. And now I don't have to worry about it. And it was what I wanted. So I'm glad I did that. A little more, again, goes with that whole budget and what I spent thing, but glad that that's done. So we talked about the concrete. That was, you know, about 18.6. So that was a little over half. So I'm just under 33,000 for the concrete and everything surrounding that, the framing, the wood, all the lumber, the siding, the sheeting, the roof, just to build the building. I'm just under 33,000 for that. So now if we go over to the garage doors, I've got an 8x8 garage door in the rear and a 16x8 garage door in the front. And that's got a high lift rail. I did that in case I want to put a lift back in that corner, that the rails for the door aren't in the way and I can do stuff back there. I probably could have done that for this front door, but I'm not going to put a lift up here. I'm not going to do anything where I need that height in the front of the shop. So I just did regular railing for the, you know, whatever you call that, for the garage door. The front door is insulated because the sun in the evening is just going to beat on that door and it's just going to heat it up. But the back door, I might insulate it later on, but in fact, the whole building's not insulated right now. We'll get into that in a minute. And then the sun's coming through right now because it's in the morning here this weekend, and that's fine. But by the time the sun gets up, there's a lot of trees behind the shop, so the sun isn't really hitting the shop so much. So insulating the door is not as critical. So I didn't choose to do that. But for the two doors, and I had to pay a little extra for those high rails, installation and everything was just over $3,000 for that. And that was installed and everything. Another thing, they came in late afternoon. I thought they weren't gonna make it that day, and they showed up at like 2 o'clock or some 3 o'clock, and they installed the whole doors, everything, and they left in a couple of hours, and it was awesome. So that was pretty cool. Entry door, just a normal steel exterior entry door here in the front corner. That was $500. And then I got 4 windows on this side. There's a lot of trees on that side of the building. There's not a lot of sunlight over there, so it just the windows wouldn't do much. But putting them here, definitely get some light through here. And I put them up high so they're not in the way of like cabinets and stuff like that. But also, I'm not gonna be breaking them. If I'm doing something and something flies or whatever, I don't know, I'm not gonna break anything. And enough to just let the light in. So they're basically 4 foot wide by 1 foot tall-ish. And so that was just under $600 for those 4 windows. So that takes care of the ceiling of the building, right? We got the 2 garage doors, the entry door, and then the windows. Together, all that's right about $4,200 for those items there. So then I'm gonna step into electrical. What I've got here in this shop, I had them wired up so that I have 220, partly because I want to put a lift. You need 220 for that. I got a couple outlets. I put them up high on the shop so that when I put a lift in, it's probably going to plug in up high, so it's out of the way. And then I've also got a couple of 220 outlets for welding. The welder I have is just a little 110 welder, but it's also can be run on 220, and I'm looking forward to be able to use that. So I'll plug that in when we get to it and that kind of stuff. But I'm about just under 4,600 bucks in electrical. It was $4,500 what they charged me to put in the breaker panel and wire it from the house. So I got to set up on the exterior of our home by our breaker panel for the home. They put in a panel that allows me to pull 100 amps from that panel and bring it all the way out here. So I've only got a 100 amp panel in here, but it shares off the house. All the outlets, the light switches, all the wiring, I got an exterior light, all that stuff was 4,500 bucks. And then I got about another $100 in just some extra little things that I bought. The lighting, I've just got these LED lights up top here. I've got 30 LED light strips, or actually technically there's 60 bulbs, right? But there's 30 of these fixtures, and each fixture is only a half an amp. So together, when all the lights are on, I'm only pulling 15 amps to light up the whole shop, which is awesome. That's that's nothing, right? So, and I've got them on a couple of switches. So I got a switch just for the rear, because I might add some more lighting, back there for the lift and stuff like that. And then I've got the bulk of the lights on another switch. So, because I'm never really going to be in the front half and just need lighting up here. So, anyways, doesn't matter. That's how I wired that up. I did buy all those lights. I got them at Costco. I think it was like 20 bucks you get 2 lights in a box. So, I bought those, like 6 months ago or something like that, in anticipation of this. Just bought a whole bunch of those lights and took a little while to install them, but here we are. So, a couple other things on the list here. Painting, I budgeted 500 bucks as I was going to paint it myself, but I ended up calling the guy that actually painted our house and have him come back, and so it'll be about 2,000 bucks for labor and paint. So it's another thing that add that $1,500 on top, because I didn't plan to do that. I was going to paint it myself, but I just don't want to. I'm kind of burnt out on working on this thing. So the painting's not done yet, but he'll probably be here in the next week or two, and we'll get that done. And so that's what we got for that, about $2,000 for painting. The driveway, from the gate to the end of our yard, I'm tearing all the grass out. I'm gonna just put in rock for now. I'm so far over a budget on this project that I can't afford to put pavement or concrete or anything. So I'm just gonna do crushed rock in there, and that's coming up here pretty soon too. That's not quite done, but I'm gonna have about 1,400 bucks for a skid steer rental and the rock to have it delivered and dropped off, and I'll spread all that stuff out. I'll probably put some out back too, behind the shop here. The scissor lift. So this thing cost me about 1,400 bucks to rent this for 2 months, and this is a fantastic. I'm glad I rented this. Again, it wasn't part of the original budget when I was doing this stuff. I didn't think about doing that, but the first thing we did is when I rented it, we were putting these trusses in, and the trusses were stacked on the wall on the end of the shop here, and we were able to just pick one truss up, put it on the rails of this scissor lift, and just drive it down, and then tip it up and install, and then drive back and get the next one. It was so easy. And I ended up using it a lot for all the rest of the stuff in the shop, putting up the lights, putting up the siding, putting up the soffits and the trim, even using it to put the shingles up on the roof. I grabbed all the shingle packets and stacked them up on the roof so that the guy would be ready to go when he comes to install it. And so I threw a couple on here and just went up, and it made it so much easier instead of carrying them on your back and climbing up a ladder. So again, that rental was awesome. And again, about 1,400 bucks to have that thing, and I'm glad I did, and I would do it again knowing what I know. And then the last part of kind of this little group here, I talked about that jackhammer in the beginning, the caulk for all of the siding, some pipe that I put in a piece of pipe while they dug the ditch for the electrical. If I ever want to do gas heating, I might want to put a gas heater back in the corner, but I needed to have access to, for gas, so I put a pipe in. So there was 150 bucks for pieces and parts and stuff to put that in, and miscellaneous, just other things that I didn't think about that came along. I got nearly $1,300 in just miscellaneous stuff that I didn't know I needed. Now I originally budgeted 1,000 bucks, and that's plenty. I'm never going to need that much, and I went over a little bit on that. So just lots of little things that you don't think you realize that you need until you're in there installing stuff, putting things together. Oh, I need to go buy a tool. I had to buy a tool for a thing, and so that stuff adds up pretty fast. And then this last section I have on here, things like ceiling fans. I have it wired I'm gonna have 2 big, like 8-foot diameter ceiling fans to keep the air cooled in here. That's 600 bucks for that. The shelves over here, those pretty heavy duty shelves. I want more, but I don't have the space for it. I got $400 in those things. Benches, I got these 2 benches and these cabinets just off of Marketplace, right? It was pretty cheap. These are pretty sturdy. This will work for what I need to do. And I got, you know, $350 and all that stuff. And then those lights I was telling you about, I got $300 and those LED lights up top. So that was another $1,400 or so for that stuff. So that kind of gives me the whole total, about $52,500 is where I'm at. It's a lot of money, but when I was having this kind of quoted and figured out, it was going to be double that, a little over double that, 100 to 125 to have somebody just come and just build the whole thing for me, just take care of all of it. And I just go out one day and my shop's done, right? So I saved a little over half building it myself. I did build this. I didn't do the concrete and I didn't do the shingles. I didn't do the electrical. And I won't be doing the painting, but everything else I did, and I had the help of my family. My wife helped out a ton. She was here a lot, getting me tools, handing me stuff, holding this piece there, putting that in there. She did a lot, and it made this job absolutely doable with her help, and then had the family come and help put these walls up and stuff like that. So that was awesome. So that's kind of the breakdown of the cost and the expenses. My original budget was $39,000, or we'll call it 40. Let's just round it up. I figured I could do this for 40. There was some things that, like I said, like $2,000 for the shingles to install that, $1,400 to rent that man lift. What else was there? There was $1,500 in paint that I decided to do later. You know, have a guy do for me. The soffit and the fascia trim for around the top of the shop up here outside. Didn't even think about that I was going to need that. And so I didn't include it in my budget when I was putting stuff together, and that was $1,000 just for soffit and trim up top. So things like that can sneak up on you. So that's why I went from basically $40,000 to $52,000. Just things that kept coming up and changed my mind on some stuff. So that's that. So that's all the costs. That's probably why you're here the most, is to figure out what it costs to build this stuff and do this stuff. But I got quite a bit of other things that I was going to talk about, like time. How long did it take to do this? So really the project started about 5 months ago. We actually were replacing the electrical panel in our home, the 200 amp panel that we have for our house. And at the time I was having them set up on the exterior home to pull power from that for this, because we had to have that replaced, and I knew we were gonna build in the shop. So that kind of started the project back then. And then I had the gate put in to get to the shop, and that stuff was all done, and it probably sat here for a month or two before we got done anything else, because I knew I needed to get that stuff done and get ahead of it. But really, after that, kind of it started when I started breaking up that concrete, rented that jackhammer and busted up that concrete to get that 10 by 20 shed out of here, out of the way. From the start of that till now, 2.5 months-ish from the time I started breaking the concrete till the time that right now we're filming this, right? So that's not too bad. A lot of it was waiting for, like, I had to, because of the permit, I had to have inspections and had to schedule inspections. You just can't call them up and they're going to be there in an hour, kind of a thing. So you had to schedule for that. There was, waiting for the concrete. There was a little hiccup with the plans. We had changed a component of the foundation here, the mono slab, but it wasn't updated on the drawing, and the inspector didn't have that information on the drawing. So we lost a week. I had to get the drawings updated, then get those submitted for the permit and get that updated so that they could have that information. My fault, nobody else's fault but mine. I should have done that before we scheduled everything, but stuff like that kind of slows things down. And then, we had a small vacation in there, to go visit some family, so that we lost a weekend of that. Just like you guys, I've got a regular job, and so this was a lot of working in the evenings and long weekends to get this thing done. That's the reason why it took so long. If I was just at home all day, and this was my job, that'd be great. You'd knock it out in a couple weeks and you'd be done. But so it takes a long time when you're doing it yourself, and then you also, when you need help, you kind of limited it to when they're available. So when my family come to help me put up these walls, we just couldn't do it that afternoon. We kind of like, hey, how about next weekend? We'd schedule or whatever. So that takes some time, and so that's why it took about 2.5 months to get everything done. The deadlines, again, you're meeting deadlines, because I've got a inspection scheduled. I had to make sure stuff was done. In fact, the final inspection for this building, I scheduled it, and the windows came in the day before. And I knew they were supposed to be coming, and I'll talk about the windows here in a minute, because that really wound me up. But these windows, I got them, and everything was done on the siding except for from just right below the window to the top, because I couldn't put the siding on until the windows were in, because I had to put the trim on the windows. So that kind of, you're crunching for that, trying to meet those deadlines. And so if you're building your shop and you're trying to schedule stuff, just a heads up that sometimes things don't work out and you gotta move things around. So let's see, some hurdles that I had. The size limit of this building. So they say build the biggest shop you can afford because it will still be too small. And it's true. While this is 24 by 40, it is a large shop. It's much, much larger than the garage that I was working in, really, because I only had that one bay to work in. Sometimes I pull my truck out and have two bays. I can have my car and my truck, my Ford and my Mustang and my F100. I can work on them together. But really, you're just really limited. And this shop, as big as it is, I'm starting to put stuff in here and place things, and I'm already finding out how much room I don't have that I thought I was gonna have. And so this is the biggest shop I could build for the spot. The distance from the shop to the house, I'm limited because I got concrete already there. I guess I could have cut the concrete up, but I really didn't want to be any closer to the house because it starts to get too much of a narrow passageway. And I can't go any farther that direction because of my fence and there's trees and stuff like there. I cut down a little bit of shrubbery and stuff to put this in, but this is about as wide as I could get right where I'm at. And then the length of it, we were actually going to be closer to the garage, which is just over here. But I found out that there's a gas line that runs from our house right out to the edge of our property. And unless I wanted to spend $5,000 moving that gas line, I had to move the shop. So by moving the shop, it moved it 6 feet that direction. And the downside is when you're sitting on our back deck and stuff, like looking at it, the shop now sticks out farther and it's becoming more of an eyesore. So I could have built a longer shop because the width is kind of fixed, but then it just becomes this massive eyesore. And so it was kind of a compromise of what's the biggest shop I can realistically fit in here before it becomes this horrible, looking building. So that's what the size limit that I was telling you about, these hurdles. Back to the location. So again, talking about why this is here and where it's at. I was actually originally going to put it in the back corner of our property. Previous owners had cleared out some trees where they were going to build a shop, and they ended up not doing it. And we bought the place and stuff. But I thought, well, I'll just put the shop out there. If I ever get a chance to build a shop, I'll just put it out there because it's already cleared and ready to go. But I never really wanted to walk from the house out there. And every time you got to go to the shop, it's just first world problems, I know, but I just didn't want to have this to go back and forth. If I ever needed anything at the house or whatever, go to the shop. It's just this big trek, and I didn't want to do that, but I could have put a much larger building back there. Well, where we're at now, much closer to the house, closer to the bathroom, right? So this is why we ended up in this spot and why we ended up with this size is because of the location. Okay, then the last thing here on this hurdle was these, again, talking about these windows. It took 8 weeks to get these windows. Now I'm just whining, but they told me 3 weeks. And so I actually had ordered these windows before we even broke ground for the foundation, for the concrete. Just so I would have them done, and I'm so glad I did. I don't know the reason what took them so long. It was supposed to be 3 weeks, ended up being 8 weeks and 1 day actually. 8 weeks and 1 day to get these windows. And if I would have ordered them any later, they would have been later and it would have messed up with my final inspection. So the windows are great, they're fantastic. There's nothing fancy, they don't open. There's no triple pane, super argon fill, whatever. They're just a normal exterior window, double pane stuff. And I'm not happy with the company. I'm not gonna say who they are, it doesn't matter, but just the heads up, if you guys go to order windows for your shop, it's something that was holding up the finishing of this project. And so order them as early as you can. Right, and if they have to sit in the garage for a month until you put them in, that's peace of mind, right? So, okay. Best part is the space. I love having this extra space to work on everything. I can have both of the cars I'm working on right now, my F100 and my Mustang in here. I'll be able to put a lift in here. I've got room to do some more welding that I just was always limited in the space in my garage. And I wanted to be able to do more stuff, but then you start getting that, I don't want to move the car out. I don't want to have to park it outside because I got to do, and you start making excuses of not doing something because you don't have the space. And so now that's not going to be an issue. Recording space. I mean, just to record something in here. In fact, let me show you real quick in the garage here. So if we go out the door here, and into the garage. So a lot of my stuff, you guys would see these videos, it was always recorded from right around here. And this is all the, all the crap that I had in that 10 by 20 shed I was telling you about. I got to get all that moved into my shop. The Mustang would always see here. I'd have my truck parked here and the wife's car would park over there. And so a lot of the filming would be from right here, or sometimes I would do it from right here, or even from the side, but it was just super limited. And it just felt like a claustrophobic kind of corner. You know, a lot of stuff I'd film on the bench and, you know, use this thing to hold the camera to film stuff. And there's just not enough space, and it's really bad, it's really cluttered, but I'm in the middle of something, so it's okay. This is just not enough space to do what I wanted to do. So for moving out here into the shop, you know, I've got a lot more space to do the filming that I want to do, and I don't feel like I'm stuck in a corner all the time trying to film stuff. So that's a plus, right? That's an advantage for this setup. Then of course the lift, looking forward to having that. It's not happening anytime soon because, like I said, I spent the money on the shingles, but that's okay, is what it is. I'll get there eventually, and I am set up for it. We just need to save up for it, right? Then the 220, again, having that for the lift and having it for a welder, I'm excited about that. That's another good part about this. And then organization. You saw just there in the garage just how cluttered everything is. Now a lot of stuff just sitting there because of moving things around, but I'm gonna get some more cabinets as I get, as time goes on and stuff. I'll be able to spread things out a little bit and not just have stuff stuck in a corner, shoved in the corner. I'm hoping to have things a little more organized, so it's a big advantage, right, of having the shop. So let's see the next thing on the worst part, space. This, I'm whining, but it's already too small. This is much larger than what I had, and I'm very grateful for it, but I'm already finding as I'm putting equipment in the corners and hanging stuff up, gosh, I wish I had another foot or two that way, or a couple of feet that way. I'm having to find spots to tuck things because I don't have enough space. It is a massive improvement, but that is a part that I'm starting to deal with already. Cleaning this shop, in the garage, didn't take much to kind of clean the area you're working in because you don't have any space to work in, so the area that you make that's dirty is smaller, right? Well, now I've got a much larger area to keep clean, and so I'm hoping that when you guys are watching these videos coming up that it's just not dirty all the time. So we'll see if I can keep that going. Temperature, that's another part that I'm going to deal with. So back to the budget, I had budgeted, I planned or kind of explored looking into doing insulation and some drywall for this. I figured it's gonna be about $6,000 to put in insulation, put the drywall in, insulate the ceiling, and I just ran out of money on that. So right now this thing is not insulated. I do have a vent ridge, or the ridge vent up there, so that will help get some of the heat out of the top. And when these big two garage doors open, there is a breeze that does come through here, which is kind of nice. But as this, right now when I'm filming this today, it's gonna get to 100 degrees. That's hot. And it's gonna be toasty in here. I don't have the fans in yet. And without it being insulated, I can't close it up and work in here. So I'm gonna have to deal with that. And then the opposite of that is in the winter time, because it's not insulated, it's gonna get cold. We get below freezing a lot where I'm at. So it's gonna be cold in here. And this is something maybe you guys can help me out with. I haven't really explored it too much because I've been so busy with everything else. But with that ridge vent, I don't know if I put a heater in here, how much of that heat am I gonna just lose right out the vent? If I insulate it, that will keep the exterior heat and cold from kind of attacking the building, right? But if I put in a heater in here, I'm gonna lose a lot of heat, right? I mean, again, I haven't dug too much into that. I was looking at maybe doing like that spray foam stuff up there in the ceiling in between the trusses, and then just regular fiberglass pink stuff, in the walls, and then put the drywall up. But that'll probably happen down the road. But if I have that vent up there, I don't plan to put drywall on the bottom of the trusses for like a ceiling. So I don't know if that's gonna do anything for me. So anyways, if you guys know anything about that, give me a comment down below about heating options and how limited am I for the setup that I have. So let me know on that. And then the last, I have got it written down, I put cutting corners. I wouldn't really say cutting corners. It's more of cutting out processes and things like the insulation. I cut that out. I can't afford that right now. And as you get towards the end of the project, you get burnt out. That's why I'm gonna have a guy come and paint. I just don't wanna play anymore. I'm done. It's been 2.5 months of working on this thing every day after work and on the weekends, and I wanna get back to working in my garage. I know it sounds I'm kind of whining again, but I don't wanna work on this, and I'm at the very end of the finish line here. I wanna stop, and I'm gonna get to work on my project. So what I'm saying is just a heads up for you guys, you might get there. If you're doing something like this, you'll get to the point where you're giving up a little bit. And as long as you're aware of that, maybe you can make some choices and some changes that go along with that. But try to do your best to kind of finish the project, get to the goal line, but also understand your limits and where you want to be. So, all right, the last topic I got in here. Let's wrap this thing up. Future plans. So I talked about the lift. I'm gonna probably put one in this corner here. The reason why I actually have 2 doors is I made it set up so that you could drive through here. And if you go out the back of the shop, I have a path that goes through the trees, and you can go around to the other side of my property, and there's another gate on the other side of the house. This is a 12-foot gate over here. It's a 10-foot gate on the other side. So you could drive through if you ever needed to do that. I wanted that option for whatever reason. If I'm towing something and I need to pull through, whatever, I don't know. But I may put another lift on that side. I was thinking about a 4-post lift for storing cars or whatever, but it would make it really hard for the drive-through part. So I may put in a 2-post. I don't know what I'm gonna do. 1 lift for now. We'll see how it goes down the road, but that's kind of what the future is. I was thinking on that. I also have heating. Again, talking about that heating thing. I do have an outlet up there in the corner to plug in, get one of those gas-powered heaters, with a blower on it, and future maybe installation, but that was kind of what I was thinking for heating. I don't want to put an electric heat, just probably because I'm only limited to the 100 amps that this panel can take, and because I'm sharing it with the house, I really didn't want to put an electric heat because that puts just an additional load on my whole system for the home, and if we're doing anything else, I really don't want to get close to popping breakers and stuff like that. Lighting, so we've got all these lights. This is good for lighting now. I may put more lighting in the back, just is when I get a lift back there, if I need more lighting for stuff. But for lighting, I'll probably put a light underneath here just to shine on the bench. But I think we're pretty much done for lighting. Basketball. Okay, so we've got a basketball hoop that we took down so that we can do this construction here, but it's in the front in the driveway, but it's on the side of the driveway, and it's kind of in the way almost. And you can't park out there if you ever want to use the basketball hoop, because then you got to move the car. And again, first world problems, I know. I don't want to have to move the car if I don't have to. So, and then driving in and out of the shop here, you have to drive around that pole once I install it back on the ground. So I really would like not to have that there. And we're looking at maybe putting a concrete pad out back down the road, and then just installing the basketball hoop on the back of the shop. And then we've got a concrete pad back there for whatever I might need, but then also a place to play basketball. So separate, independent of the shop, but that's just something that I was thinking about. And then, yeah, then the last thing I have is the drive-through. I want to be able to have that option to drive through here. And if I had that concrete pad, that would help with that. But okay, so that's more or less what I had on this shop. And this is kind of a long video now, but I just wanted to kind of explain where I was at with stuff, what it cost, what I like, what I don't like, problems that I had. Would I do it again? Yes. I would do things a little bit differently, but I would more or less build the same shop, limited by the space and the location of everything. Definitely rent that man lift again, and you pretty much have the same shop if I had to do it again. And so that's good. I made good decisions, and we got where we wanted to be, and now it's just time to start using it. So I'm gonna get after it. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next one.